Welcome to Cinema Gulp. I'm John.
And I'm Ben, and welcome to the Aliens 35th Anniversary Special.
Let's roll!
On the list of favorite movies of all time, where does Aliens from 1986, directed by James Cameron, rank?
The top of the mountain, the pinnacle of everything there is cinema. This is the greatest achievement ever put to celluloid. No film has ever surpassed Aliens. And I wish, well, I don't wish because I love Aliens so much. I don't want any film to really beat it. But every new movie I watch with the eyes to hope maybe this will be the one that lives up to be better than Aliens, or at least in the same ballpark.
You want movies to strive to be as good as Aliens.
Yes.
And I agree with you.
The dedication that James Cameron had making this movie, like just the way, the details in this movie, the way it builds on the first movie and lives up to be a better film, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, I'm a big fan of Alien as well, but Aliens is the better film between the two, in my opinion. I have no trouble saying that. I know some people struggle with how they feel on that. I did see Aliens first, being a young 10-year-old. I think I was actually 11 at the time. It took me to home video before I got to see it. I did not get to see it in the theater because I was only 11, and that wasn't really the kind of film my mom was taking me to see. But I finally got a chance to see it over at our dear old pal Tony's house, which, you know, he was a little bit older than us, or a little bit older than me at the time. So he was always able to see these kind of films before I did. And he would actually share, you know, things about R-rated movies that I wasn't able to see. And I was like hanging on the edge of my seat to hear every detail he could share with me about this movie specifically. And I remember being in a Noggles and him explaining the movie to me. And when he got to the stuff about the Queen and Bishop being ripped in half, I mean, I was just like salivating to hear more about this movie. And it just sounded so cool. It sounded like the best thing ever. And he was really high on it because he had got to see it in the theater. So it took months before it was on video and he could share it with me at that point. And, never looked back. It was just such an amazing movie. Nothing has ever been able to come close to, only other James Cameron films have come close to supplanting it at the top of the mountain.
I was 9, and I actually, my experience for the first time is different than yours, whereas I didn't know anything about it. No one said, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And you're 9. Your memory is so fucking weird at that point anyway. God bless him. My cousin Jeremy took me and my brother. My cousin was, I think, 17. So he got us in. We saw it in the theater at one of my favorite theaters growing up, which was the Orange Cinedome. Nice. And a big theater, like 800 and some odd seats, big domed, curved screens, kind of revolutionary for the time. Mm-hmm. That movie scared the fuck out of me so bad. I remember, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was a sequel like yourself. I immediately attached myself and my emotions to the Hudson character. He calmed the situations down. I mean, we'll get into that stuff, but that's one of the things I remember the most is being so frightened and loving this guy because he's funny. And it gives you a second to breathe, you know? But the thing I remember the most is going home because my cousin was babysitting us, and I had to have my cousin and my brother go through the entire house and scope it out to make sure there was no aliens in there because I would not go inside the house. That's how much this movie freaked me. When people say it's not a horror movie, it's an action movie, I laugh. Like, are you nuts? It's way scarier than the first movie.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm always a little bit annoyed at everyone saying that this is the action movie version of Aliens.
And it is, but, you know, it's still scary as a motherfucker.
It is, but there is no action for an hour. Like, yeah, that's like nothing. A sin in an action movie. That's a sin. So I don't know. I think it's just an all-around perfect movie. Yes, it has action in it, but I look at it just as a sci-fi movie.
Isn't that so great? He really does. I don't want to say pay homage because that's not the right term, but he respects the first movie so much. He knows he wants to make something completely different, but he respects it so much that tonally, both of the movies, the first hour is slow and it's intelligent and it's regular people with good dialogue because he wants you to care about what happens to the people. And Aliens, when I was a kid and I saw it, I remember just being wall to wall nonstop action. And when when you get a little bit older and you start rewatching it, you're like, oh wow, there's really like no action for a very long time, because it's investigating things, it's creating the story, it's creating the characters, and it's building things up. I think he did that on purpose. A director like James Cameron could have jumped into action sooner, but he wanted to be more like the first movie, where it takes its time. I mean, at least that's my theory. I don't know.
No, I agree with that completely. I think that's one of the things that he did so well, was capturing that same tone that the first movie has, and the buildup of the tension, and how the tension builds and releases throughout the first film. Um, they both inhabit the same world, which often when you have a different director coming in to do a sequel, you can, unless the first one didn't really have a director's stamp, like it's a Marvel movie or something where it's more part of a machine. It's rare that a different director can come in and make a sequel that still feels so tonally the same as the previous film. Like most people
just look at the other two sequels.
Well, that's what hurts.
They don't feel like they inhabit the same world to me at all.
No. I mean, I do give the third film credit for staying serious and having the serious tone that the first two has.
Yeah.
But the story lacks, and that's the problem. He just builds on the world that the world in the first film left us with so many mysteries, and the second film builds on that first film, but doesn't ruin any of the mystery of the first film. In fact, it creates new, there's new facets of the alien world that you learn, like their life cycle, which to me was always one of the most interesting things about just coming out of Alien. Like even without having seen Alien, because I don't think I saw Alien till a year or two after Aliens. It was definitely after, and I'd already seen Aliens a number of times to really take it in and fall in love with it as the story and the creature and everything that you learn about in that film. Yeah. But the creepiness of the life cycle of going inside of a human and gestating and coming out of a human, like that sticks with you at any age. The stuff about the Queen, it takes it in a different direction, but still is just like, you never lose how creepy their life cycle is, but you learn so much more about them as a creature in the second film.
Yeah.
But then the mystery that we all still wanted from the first film still remained, which was like, where did they come from? And what was this space jockey? And you had to wait till Ridley Scott ruined that many years later and just made a muddled story out of that cool mystery that was still there with the first two films. That's why together they're so wonderful, that they didn't ruin anything, that neither film, fucked with the mythology of the other film in a way that ruined anything. And it wasn't until later sequels that they just started piling new shit on that was ruining what came before.
James Cameron took these interesting questions that probably nobody would have ever thought were that important, and that derelict ship is still there. There's more stories to tell. All we got was this little piece. Like that, to me, that's just like genius, because it's not like the studio was like, let's make a sequel. This was a guy who saw the movie and was like, I want to write something. Think about that, like being the guy that wrote something based off something that they saw and made a sequel that didn't just expand on it, made it stronger, made it scarier, made it more interesting, and to me, much more entertaining. As much as I love Alien and respect it and admire it for what it is, it's not the most entertaining movie in the world, at least not compared to stuff like Aliens.
It is an action movie, and so it brought that element to an already fascinating story, like the most fascinating creature to ever grace the screen. I mean, you have Draculas and werewolves and Creature of the Black Lagoon and Jaws, and it doesn't matter. You can pile on every monster that's ever graced the screen. This is the best one. Well, maybe not the facehugger itself, but every single facet of this creature and how it evolves. It's so much more interesting, frightening, believable, like the way it comes to life on screen in those first two films. I mean, they ruin it with sequels, but in the first two films, in Aliens, another thing that really always stuck with me as an 11-year-old seeing this movie, how believable the creatures are on screen. I honestly still to this day like to think of the Queen Alien as a real creature that existed, that like they really filmed that animal running around and doing shit because it looks so damn believable. And the aliens themselves jumping from wall to wall, they feel so real. And not just because they are tactile things and not made of CGI, but they bring them to life in a character way Stan Winston, working on these characters after what Geiger created, brought them to life even in a way the first film didn't, because the first film's a little bit, it's totally creepy and stuff, but it's a little bit clunky in the way that it moves compared to how scary it gets when it's hopping off of walls and running down a hallway at you so much quicker than anything you see in the first film.
It's fascinating that there was 6 alien suits to make it seem like they're everywhere, and that's in cutting, but it's also in like a director whose vision is so far beyond when you're standing on set, like trying to explain to them like, hey, yes, there's 6 guys here, but these things are fucking everywhere. What's your favorite design out of Facehugger, Chestburster?
I think they call him Alien
Warrior, yeah. And then you have
Sentry.
the runner ones, which were like from like part 3, that are just kind of, and then Queen, because I think that's all of them, right?
Yeah, I mean the Queen is probably, well, the classic Alien is
the Warrior.
Mama, come to mama, baby, come on. Mom, you've been bad.
Yeah, the classic Alien is, I guess, kind of my favorite because there's just more imagery of that. It seems scarier because like the Queen you wouldn't think the Queen could sneak up on you, but the classic Alien can be hiding in that tiny little alcove that you didn't see. It can be like, we haven't seen what a Queen looks like meshed into the wall and not knowing it's there standing behind you.
Yeah.
Now, if I see some of that where they pull that off, maybe the Queen will feel like it deserves the spot. But
the scariest thing about the Queen is the tail, for sure, because it utilizes that fucking tail where the other ones don't,
Well, the intro to the Queen, when you walk into its hive the first time, and how big the headpiece is, it just looks so much. It looks so massive. When it finally breaks free from its egg sac and starts moving through the hallways, it's diminished a little bit. It's still frightening. And the battle with
to scale, it doesn't look quite as big. There's a little forced perspective when you first see it, I think.
Yeah, and it has like these extra bone structures coming off the side that I guess are not part of it, but it looks like it in that main shot where you first reveal it. It looks
that is really
bigger.
Creepy. Yeah, it just kind of turns into an alien with a different kind of head after. It's still bigger.
Yeah,
you're right. It does, like, I think that's all part of like the birthing structure or something of like how the babies, I don't know. I don't remember if it was Basky or Frost who meets their ends by that alien that jumps off the wall and like pulls him back, and then the flamethrower goes off.
That's Dietrich.
Oh, that's Dietrich. Oh, God damn, that's the scene right there. That's the scene that like
throwers Frost, and Frost drops the ammo bag, and then there's explosions that kill.
When that thing jumps out, that's where you're like, this is not Alien. Like, this is a different movie. I just want to bring up the budget for this movie, John, because $18 million for a movie that looks like it cost $200 million.
Well, you can compare it to any $200 million production today, and it would look better and work better in its storytelling, in its fright factor, in its excitement factor. That, I think, that's all credit, not all credited, but mostly credited to James Cameron, in my opinion. He must have robbed some banks to put what's up on screen, because it certainly, as you said, feels like there's way more than 18 million put into. Just look at the shot behind you. That's all done with models, and it looks so real. It looks like a real, space with depth, and every ship looks functional. Every piece of equipment in this movie, which all still to this day is some of the coolest machinery, ships, guns and whatnot that have been brought to the screen, and they're all very functional, feel like they're real. Those guns are like, we all really want those guns to exist in this world.
Oh my God.
Everything from the movie Aliens. I want everything from the movie Aliens to be a part of the world I live in.
What did you ever hear about? What was the deal behind the Sulaco physically being shaped as a pulse rifle? Because when you see the Sulaco, the exterior of it, it even has a fucking handle. It even has like a, like a trigger, pretty much. It looks exactly like a pulse rifle. I think, and that's just the badass nature of how Cameron wanted to introduce the Marines, and that it's not a freighter with a bunch of pussies on it. It's like it's bad ship looks like a gun, you know?
Yeah, I always thought it definitely looked more military than the Nostromo.
Which was not a
kinda,
military ship. Yeah, yeah.
the way it's introduced when you're seeing like the front of it moving across the face of the planet and stuff, it has kind of a battleship. I don't know exactly which naval ship I should say it looks the most like, but it has kind of a naval ship feeling to it,
It
which made
does,
it feel
yeah.
militarized.
But anyway, this movie went on to do 85 million dollars in the US, which doesn't sound like a lot these days, but it's more than quadruple its budget, which means it was a success. 120 million worldwide, which is kind of shocking considering it was filmed in London. I figured maybe they would go see it, but maybe they didn't give a shit. I don't know. But pretty big success for R-rated movie in 1986, I would think. And it didn't get Sigourney an Oscar nomination.
She got an Oscar nomination, one of the first for a film of this kind, science fiction or action, whatever you want to label it as. Apparently, because it's not a drama with a bunch of sappy bullshit.
Who'd she lose out to? Do you know?
Oh, she lost out to Marlee Matlin for the deaf actress. I forget what movie, but
a movie that no one has ever heard of again.
Yeah, honestly, like in hindsight, I guarantee most people would pick Sigourney's performance.
Nowadays, yeah.
It's so believable in a scenario that is, so impossible for anyone to ever really find themselves in. And this whole movie is so believable. That's what it is. It's the tone of this movie and how believable everything feels, from the acting to the creatures on screen. Every image feels real. Like
every environment feels lived in.
Yeah.
I mean, even Ripley's apartment on the space station or whatever, like it just feels, there's things in the corners and there's used soap bars in the bathroom, like so lived in. And
there's a half-eaten donut on the
half-eaten donut. That donut would be pretty, well, I guess it was being soaked in water because of the dripping was coming down, but I'm like, that donut should have been pretty moldy. But okay, so this movie starts out with a brilliant title scene. I love it. It's scary. It's got that Horner, just that vibe to some of the spookier stuff that he does. And then we see, I always forget the name of this ship, but it has a name. The
Narcissus.
The Narcissus. Yeah. See, John knows. So this movie starts out and it's the aftermath of Alien, but we don't know anything else yet.
I feel like it used to be a trope that a lot of sequels felt like they had to begin right where the last film left off. A lot of movies nowadays put some time in between their films and develop the story that happened in between, but it seemed almost like a trope back in the day of like, start right where the last one left off. And this one pretty much does. I mean, yes, 57 years have passed, but for our main character, it's like no time has passed. So it's pretty much right where that story left off, which is really cool. Like you don't feel like you've missed anything. Then you realize you have, that 57 years have passed, and it kind of blows your mind. You like if you're watching these movies back to back and you hear that information for the first time that she hears, she doesn't look any older. You just watched the first movie and now you're watching the second one and you're ready to see what's going to happen next for her. And you hear that amount of years that Burke tells her. And then it instantly goes into her reaction, which is all taking place in a dream. You think that she's just like having this bad reaction to it and trying to process that information. But then you start getting the chest burster, pushing its way through and her freaking out, the cat hissing. The tension in that opening scene is the only thing we get for a while, and it sustains you. Like you are already on the edge of your seat in the first 5 minutes because that little dream sequence, and that sustains you until an hour into the movie before anything else happens.
Well, the fact that you do find out that information in a dream, which you find out is a dream, I remember thinking, well, is it really 57 years or was that just part of the dream? Because without the cut scenes that are in the director's cut, they don't address that again. I mean, they addressed that she used to be a flight officer and like now she's forgotten or whatever in the system. But the scene with the daughter stuff really hammers home the point that it was 57 years. Because when you get that exposition and then you find out she's dreaming, a little bit of you is like, well, wait a minute, is that real? Or is she reliving something she already knew? No, it was for the audience to learn that, but then it was within a dream.
That's the biggest loss, in my opinion, from the cut scenes. I kind of feel like that little bit of information, how important that is to her character development with Newt, even though you don't need it, like you still connect to that relationship between her and Newt without that scene in the theatrical cut. But I wish that's the one scene I wish was part of the theatrical cut that's part of the special edition.
No one either believes her or just doesn't care about her story. Would you really care though if you're a company like Whalen Yutani and 57 years ago a shipment blew up? It's like, I don't know.
Well, I think they don't forget about lost money.
My bitch better have my money.
So then they bring in Burke to sort of like butter her up, right? And who better than Paul Reiser, who doesn't get enough credit for this movie, dude?
No, he sells every scene he needs to. When, like you said in the beginning, being able to butter her up and kind of be the only friend that she has in this new environment. Somebody who believes her story, obviously believes it enough to fucking kill everybody, get every character of this movie essentially killed because of his stupidity on having them check out the ship. But
well, that's the thing. You really like him at first, and if you know Paul, I had already known Paul Reiser from like Beverly Hills Cop and a couple of other things, and you're like, what a likable actor to get to play this sniveling weasel, and he sells those parts so good, especially the part where he's like, you had your chance, Gorman, and he seems like he's so on Ripley's side.
Yeah,
it's kind of like devastating to find out what he's up to, because he's such a team player to an extent, not like physically, but
his performance deserves a lot of credit, as you pointed out.
And you know how I talked about like the scene where the alien jumps out of the wall and goes after Basky? Was it Basky? Is that what we said? No, yeah. It jumps.
No. I'm sorry,
Dietrich. Sorry.
Yeah.
I said that's the scene where this is an alien, this is aliens. There's also a scene before that that's more subtle, and that's the introduction of the Colonial Marines when we see the Sulaco. But when those things open and it's the Marines right there, you kind of already know, wow, this is a different crew. This is a vastly different crew, and it's shot and edited very different too.
Everybody's introduction, what little moments they get to do in all of those intro scenes, whether it's Apone putting a cigar in his mouth
immediately.
Hudson talking about how cold the floor is, Drake giving that snide comment about, you look, hey, Hicks, you look just like I feel, like everyone's introduced so perfectly. And that's just the first few people that you see actually get out of the pod. And then when they make their way into the locker room, you get those great moments with Vasquez's introduction. You ever been mistaken for a man? Really, everyone just gets like gets a line to establish almost every single character.
We were talking about like he takes his first hour just the way Alien did. And this is why, because it's so rewarding. Like when they get their ass kicked in that first scene, it like means something already, because oh wow, it's like they're marrying craning all these characters that like I thought were going to be in more of it, and there were so many more characters in this one too. That's a big difference. And it's harder to juggle that kind of stuff with a way bigger cast.
But that's what I think they do a great job, is with that big cast, with this whole collection of Marines that could all kind of blend in and be like the same machismo guy. They all stand out in their own way. There's only two that don't really get the opportunity. And
yeah, think about how many memorable characters were created out of that giant cast. So many memorable characters, and who never felt shortchanged. I mean, a lot of them, Oh my God, the submersive nature of the dropship. When I was a kid, when you're a kid, the movie theater screen seems 50 times bigger than it does when you're an adult. It almost feels like you're on a roller coaster ride. And this scene, the way it was shot, with all that different depth of field of how like it opens and you see. I don't know. I mean, they don't show space a lot in this movie, but when they do, it feels like that empty vat of darkness, which is what it is. It's not bright and it's not colorful. It's literally just, we got to get out of the ship and we got to get to this atmosphere as quick as we can. And just everything from the close-up shots of the people to the sound design and the way the ship drops out. And you see how scared everyone is and how Hudson's trying to be tough, like that scene just blew my fucking mind when I was a kid. Just blew it away. I loved it.
And that's another great one for character introduction. Like we get to kind of learn a few more people's faces as they're going around. They're checking the people's monitors.
Yeah.
Drake's panning his camera, because it's,
Smacks it. Yeah.
Smacks it.
Does it look wonky when the drop ship is kind of like touching down in LV-426? I love the way it looks.
Greatest shot.
That exactly right. It's a model composited in an environment. It looks perfect. I mean, and it looks exactly how I remember seeing it when I was young, and no nitpicky about it. It's creepy, and it shows you this area that, like, I guess was built, between the first and second movie, and it's just this dark, rich, spooky environment. Like, who would build something like that? It's terrifying. Even if aliens didn't fucking like there's something about Hadley's Hope that's just the tank have a name, you would know.
The APC.
Yeah, the APC, sorry. That thing is badass visually. Unfortunately, it doesn't do much, like, I mean, it does, but it doesn't get to
I think it does just enough. Like,
I wish it just used its cool guns though, but I get why.
But seeing how the gun comes, the turret moves off the back,
so it can get through it, it's so cool. But like all that stuff, like the Marines getting out, getting in their formation, and now you're like, okay, these guys aren't just goofballs. When it gets down to business, they know what they're doing. They're in sync. Finding all the test what do you call this? The test tanks or whatever with all the face huggers in them. How cool is that? Because that's the first thing you see in this movie, aliens, since the first movie. And you see a whole bunch of them and you're like, oh, that's the thing that started it all in this first movie. All that stuff works, and it's all build up and shit. Like there's so much going into them landing before you actually get into the big battle stuff, and it's all good, rewatchable shit.
The characters are so great, and the dialogue, there's quotable lines all throughout. Whether it's just stuff that I don't even know what they're referring to, just military jargon sometimes, that the way it's said by Apone or by Pharaoh when they're in the dropship, I'm in the Pike 5x5. Like, you pointed out how great a character Frost was. He only gets a couple lines, but like that line about, I guess she doesn't like the cornbread either.
It's great.
It's great humor.
Boy's got a corn cob up his ass.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it brings that tone perfectly from film 1 to film 2. But you get all this humor. I think Apone, Frost, Hudson, Vasquez, Drake. There's humor all throughout. All these characters are dropping lines that actually genuinely make you laugh and make you fall in love with them in that first 45 minutes before, anything really starts to get too intense. It's intense the whole way through because all you need to do is know this thing's going to be there when you get down. The hand thing leads into Ripley learning that there is an android sitting right next to her that she had no clue. And if you know the first movie, that is a scary thought right in that moment. That white milky blood comes down his finger, and the is to Sigourney's face. And
she plays it so good, the way she gets up, and
that realization in her head is as powerful.
Let's get into the next scene, which is the Hive. This is the scene where, for me, I don't know. I have 4 favorite scenes, but this might be the scariest one to me because it's the first time you see what's happening, and it's a massacre.
Well, so as you pointed out, it's kind of a long scene. If you take from like the moment that they find the colonists' readouts or whatever, and they realize, okay, we're going to go in and check this out. From the time they get there and they're suited up and they got their guns and they're moving inside of the complex like that, to the moment that one jumps off the wall and attacks and the shit hits the fan, really, to when they escape. I mean, it's a long drawn out scene. But you've been building to it. It's a long wait to get to that moment, so it's deserved. It's not just the tension that builds all the way up to the point that they go inside. All this introduction of characters and making their way, the drop ship and everything, that's all building. But the actual maneuvering their way through and seeing the cocooned walls for the first time, the reveals of that, aided by
and seeing how the environment has turned kind of alien, like
you go from like the background behind me where the metal is still
and then you see that beautiful Geiger type of And it's kind of hard to fit. Does that just happen? Does it just manifests where they are? You know what I mean? Like, do
No,
they?
I picture like a bug, them, moving around the wall, like making that stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah,
creating that. But
that's
we've
so
never
fucking
seen that,
creepy.
so we're not
So
sure. That's just what my
and we
mind.
don't need to see it. It's great that it's just there. You know.
Yeah. Well, there's just enough dialogue to support it. It looks secreted, but secreted from what? Okay, done.
Yeah.
They're
Oh,
like
dude,
bugs. They're like
right?
insects. That's all I need.
They're getting deeper and deeper into this thing and realizing that they're not safe.
They were told they had to put their weapons away, and that essentially got most of them killed. But I think they probably could have used their weapons in there. I mean, maybe that's the way we're supposed to see it. Is
Well,
it
because then
like
when
Burke
Vasquez and Drake do, the place still doesn't blow up, so they were wrong. They could have used them.
But that's so great about Gorman. I love Gorman's character.
I love Gorman too.
His acting in those scenes where he's not sure of himself, but trying to show that he should be in command of these people.
He owns it
so well. And then later in the film, when people need to be or in that scene when he's getting nervous and losing control of the situation and trying to still control Ripley when he has no clue what to even do.
Gorman and Ripley have this fight basically because she's going to save them, and he would rather crash the APC than go in and save these people, which later we know that ultimately he has a great character arc and realizes that and changes that and tries to do something to correct that. But that is that's a really nerve-wracked officer right there who would rather crash that thing than go in and save the team who's getting massacred. Instead
of just having a confident leader, you have a Pone who's a confident leader, boots on the ground type of leader who gets taken out quickly. If Gorman was a confident leader as well, I don't know. They're just the dynamic. There's so many interesting dynamics throughout the film, whether it's his dynamic with the rest of the soldiers, his dynamic with Burke, his dynamic with Ripley. It just plays so well.
I think what makes that the most tense and frightening experience for me in the movie, though there's other ones too, don't get me started on the infirmary, that one is, but I think it's that and again, you were talking about before we started this how many movies have ripped off aliens, and one of the main things you see, and you see this a lot nowadays, is you have monitors of people on the monitors. So you have their head cams, and then you see them getting picked off via the head cam turning into just a fuzzy screen. And this one, I guarantee you, was probably the first movie that ever did that, where who's getting picked off because you see their name and then goes to static.
Bio readout.
But the dialogue that's happening, and you were talking about Frost having these good lines. He says one of the gnarliest things off screen when they're going back and forth and cutting between what's happening is when they're going hey, they're here, they're all around us, and he goes, "Where, man? I can't see shit." That, right? That's just putting you in their shoes and going, we are so hopeless. I don't know what's going on. I don't know where these things are. And then coming out of the goddamn walls is crazy and terrorizing too.
Terrorizing. James Horner does a lot to make this movie. He really is kind of, I don't know. It's hard to say who the secondary star behind James Cameron is, because the score does a lot of work. It hits at the exact perfect moment. He sells every moment that's supposed to be scary with what typically would be a terrible jump scare, where the music is really the only thing that's making this a jump scare because it's a loud noise. The marriage of image and score all throughout this movie, especially in the moments that are supposed to make you jump, are perfection. It comes back to what you were talking about, the way it's edited. Instead of being this big grand action scene where you can actually tell what's happening to each character, it's shot through those monitors so often, but it's still so effective. People call this one of the greatest action movies ever. Well, that scene is kind of lacking. It's exciting, but it's lacking in visual action. There's no hand-to-hand combat or anything like that. You get a couple aliens getting shot. You get a couple people getting pulled away this way or that way.
If those guys weren't wearing military tactical gear and they were just people teenagers, then people would call that a horror scene. But
exactly.
because those guys are Marines, they considered an action scene.
Yeah.
Imagine that though, when you're looking at that monitor and it's showing all the people's helmets, how much work goes into, we have to shoot each one of those scenes because you're going to see aliens in the background and people shoot. So you have to shoot an action scene just so it could be in a tiny little square up in one part of like a multi-square, like fucking display. That's just insane to me.
As soon as Apone gets attacked, it's cutting back to Gorman's face and realizing, holy shit, I just lost the leader of this group. What do we do now?
Yeah.
And, Ripley's reaction to that, like shaking him, do something, Gorman. Like that's what makes that stuff so exciting. And then, just as you said, like having to shoot these scenes on the monitors and cutting back to them versus whether you're seeing Gorman's face. And then you cut back and you see like, Hicks running by with his shotgun, out of the way. Like just a moment. You just need tiny moments.
Charges guns, get the fuck out of here.
Get the fuck out of here.
We're running, we're shooting, we're hiding, we're running. Quick cutting.
It's a monster movie.
This is where you get an even better idea of who Hicks is, what his relationship with Ripley could have, should have, would have been. A little more into Hudson, a lot more into Newt. Gorman, I guess, is kind of sleeping through most of it.
Yeah.
Bishop, Vasquez, and then you get your Burke's plan. So much in this middle point of the movie happens. So you have like the revealing of Burke's plan. You have the scene that happens obviously in the medical area with the face huggers being planted. But then you also have like them sending Bishop out on like his claustrophobic. I can't even watch that scene when he's climbing through that tunnel. I can't even fucking look at that. It makes me so claustrophobic.
It keeps it more claustrophobic, just knowing that he goes straight down that tube and there's no break in it at all.
And I love that he has that specific mission, and that they like whatever we talk about this with James Cameron all the time. He always knows. Well, and this is his editors too, but they know how to cut back to everything that's happening right at the perfect moment when you need it to, because now there's a ticking clock thing, and sometimes that can make or break like a finale of a movie, like a ticking clock thing. Does it work? Does it not work? His thing works for me. I like how they show it, and he kind of like telegraphs the time it's going to take for such and such to happen. So now they're on that thing. All they got to do is survive until that thing comes down.
The face huggers getting released. I honestly, Ben, I've never sat back and thought, what is my favorite scene of this movie? Because I just love it so much as an entire production. But I could maybe say that one is my favorite because
it's gnarly,
it is so scary. And I feel like you get some really wonderful hero moments. Ripley is so smart. I love a smart hero, somebody who has to think through the problem and doesn't have time to think, but she's still able to come up with, inventive ways to try and get herself out of this situation.
Smoke detector, yeah.
She does. And then, it's the sound design and the cinematography. Again, that combination of sound or score and image all in that scene. It just works so wonderfully to ramp up the tension all throughout when you don't know where the creature is and you hear it scuttle here and there.
Or how about when she wakes up under the bed and she sees the sort of jar moving and it's got a little bit of residue on it. That James Horner, like, just, I don't know what that instrument is, that little peppery thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is basically like, that's like the theme song of a face hugger, even though it wasn't in the first one. And you haven't really seen face huggers move around like this until this point. No. All you saw was them jump out of something and then die. And then they were in jars. Now you're seeing like they're fucking tactical and gnarly and fast and strong. It's crazy.
Yeah. Oh, how believable it is when Ripley's trying to fight the tail going up the corner of the neck and holding it, trying to keep it from, getting any closer to her face. Eventually you have the Marines in there with her helping try and pull it. Like, they sell that. So again, that's why I feel like these creatures come to life in a way that is so realistic. Like, you really feel how strong this thing would be. I mean, just looking at it, you can tell it would be hard these would be strong little arms. This tail could get around your neck very easily and choke you. And it's so believable in the film, done with like fishing wire and stuff being shot backwards and just actors giving it their all in that scene to make it feel that much of a fight. I love when they shoot the glass, Hicks dives through it, like just the way that looks and sounds, even when they're hitting the glass before it breaks, like that just sounds, it sells it to me, to an 11-year-old brain, of unbreakable glass. Like you see her hit it with a chair and it bounces off. Like, I don't even know if there's glass nowadays that works that well,
it's
but
like space shuttle glass or some shit.
It's all in the sound design. But then when they dive through it and you get Hicks, jumping in there and fighting with Ripley to get the thing off. Hudson goes over and has his moment where he gets to push the thing against the wall with his leg and machine gun the hell out of that one.
I love that so much. He's just wasting so much ammo.
Yeah. And even Newt being able to be smart in the moment and push the whatever thing that it's on top of, the little rolling rack.
She's the last survivor, so she's a badass. I don't know if those heroic moments or selfish, I'm scared moments, so I'm gonna hide. But either way, she's the last survivor, so she's definitely a survivor.
I think she's a hero mostly. Mostly.
It's kind of their last stand.
Yeah.
Where the aliens start to come out of the ceiling. Oh my God, that scene. Ugh.
Oh, well, you know what we forgot to talk about in the Hive scene, but it comes into play here as well. Another thing that this movie implements, that yes, the first movie had a version of it, but this movie
movement
does it so much better. The motion tracker.
Movement, yeah.
Just to see these little blips move closer, and there'll be more of them. And then the thing spins, like the way that it spins, you can tell they're all around us. Like, it just sells it so well without, less is more. This movie does one of the best jobs ever in cinema of implementing less is more.
Because it's such a pivotal part of kind of that last stand scene where he's like, 5 meters, 4, what the hell? Like that's the scene where and again, just the the sound, it's almost like it's its own ticking clock to your demise right there. And you don't know where they're coming from or how many are coming, it's, oh my God. And then just the decision, don't make it an action giant, like bring the tension back down and have Hicks go up with that flashlight. Don't keep the music going, calm it down. And then he goes up there, the music drops, goes up there. I don't think there's music yet at that point anyway, but he brings the flashlight up and then you see them and then the music kicks in. It's like, that's so much better than just like, oh, we got to get up there and look, it's this calm, it's a scene where they almost know we're fucked.
You see the brains work of like, well, how can that be? You're reading it. You must be reading it wrong. That's inside the room.
See, I do want to see a deleted scene where the aliens cut the power. I want to see that though, man. How could they cut the power, man? They're animals. That'd be great if you just see like 2 aliens like and like snipping a wire.
There's a couple scenes that I think people complain about in terms of like, oh, are the aliens actually intelligent or not? The ending where the Queen rides an elevator up, and then this scene where they cut the power. As you know, as you love to point out, only 6 rubber costumes, and they make it feel like a room full of aliens coming over every cabinet, dropping out of the ceiling multiple times. You feel the terror in everyone in that scene of just, you're in this tiny room you thought was going to be your last stand, and the entire ceiling collapsed in with your enemy right in front of you now.
You sometimes do your best work when you have the least to work with that you would ever have again. I like Avatar. It's fine. It's still James Cameron. It's fantastic. But like when you compare that scene, any scene in Aliens where there's more than one alien in the room, the constraints of 6 rubber suits is such a blessing in disguise, because when you look at the excessive nature of something like Avatar, and that there's shit all over the screen, beautiful shit, but shit nonetheless, just everywhere. If you had the ability to do what you did in Avatar with aliens, would you show us 500 of them charging like they did in like Alien versus Predator, some just CGI mess scene of aliens running up the temple? It's like, it's so great that you never get that opportunity to even think of that scene. You only can have maybe one. I don't even know if you see more than 2 aliens on frame together at the same time in this movie, Well, it's just implied through the editing.
The ceiling, I think there's about 4
or 3.
or 5.
There's 3 or 4. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. That's the most you see. But then everything else is just, it's cuts. It's the way the actors are like, oh, there's one over there. The way they're looking around is telling you how many there are, you know? That's
it's a masterclass of editing. I mean, you being an editor, you know how important, it really, a filmmaker can be crap and hand footage over to an editor and get a good movie out of it somehow, because the editor, pieces it together in a way that makes it not what the filmmaker intended. It can be exciting or whatever. I'm sure Cameron, was very involved in exactly every cut that he wanted to see in this movie. But it goes back to your point of like being able to work with very little. He was early in his career. He had a lower budget and he just had to make something out of nothing. And in order to do that in these scenes where he was trying to make something on a grand scale for 1986, what seemed like a horde of aliens killing a bunch of Marines, it's all in the way he edits and shoots every single one of those scenes that makes it come to life like what you think. You think you're seeing what you do nowadays, like you're pointing out Avatar. I think we both just mentioned, we both just got a chance to see Tomorrow War or whatever that shit movie was. Like, you get an entire CGI army of creatures running at you in every movie now that has that kind of aspect, whether it's zombies or whatever monster movie it is. If there's more than 10 of the monsters, you're going to see a scene where they're all CGI'd running up a hill or running up a building or running down a hallway.
Here's the example. That movie, when you first get introduced to your big alien attack set piece, what's the camera focusing on? The alien, right? And the person is just a stunt person, and you maybe see a quarter of their back. That's the example of the difference. Aliens, it's never focused on the alien coming at the screen. It's the person, and the alien is lurking through sound design and through rubber suits.
They keep the focus on who is in peril, who is facing down an alien in this moment. As you said, those reaction shots, if there's one over there, there's one over there, you always know who it is, what the scenario is, because you're focused on the character. You're not losing track of them. And just
because the moment is for the character.
Yes.
The moment is for the character. The aliens are there,
not just for spectacle, which is for the audience. He didn't run into the same problem Spielberg had with Bruce the shark, but he used the same technique of show this thing sparingly, show it for the right frame, not every frame. Not just because you need to see spectacle. Oh, we've got another shark moment, let's make sure you see a lot of the shark. No, sometimes all you need is a fin for it to be an effective shark moment. Sometimes all you need to see is an alien head, whip towards somebody or whatever, or come out of the smoke. And that's all you get for that whole moment, that whole character moment. But it's effective enough to sell the frights and the excitement and the thrills in every single one of these scenes.
We got to talk about the people that we lose, the characters that we lose in this scene. Because this is that second big gut punch where the cast gets deteriorated significantly again. And I believe it starts out with my boy Hudson.
Game over, man.
He goes out like a rock star. He goes out like a rock star, though. Like, he gets over his fears, kind of knows he's going to die, and just this is my time. And he takes a whole lot of them out. But then the only one in the movie that comes out through the floor. And I still don't really get the geography of how that works. Like if it lifted up the thing, wouldn't he lift off with it? It doesn't matter. It was awesome scene.
Yeah.
And he's shooting down at it, and he's going to have a miserable next couple hours.
I love the way Hicks tries to pull him out, but then an alien's coming over top and he has to do the roll. He has to roll and shoot at the same time. Like, those are the moments that you could say feel like an action movie, where it's this choreographed scene. You're trying to save your buddy who's being pulled into the floor. You got to roll and shoot, but it's so minuscule. But
that's an action scene, though. You got people shooting rocket launchers at aliens, and they're flipping over. Oh, and just Ripley trying to figure out how to get the fucking safety off, and then just shooting just into
Even going in the tunnels is a nice little bit of plant and payoff with Newt's character, making that believable. that their escape, that she can play the hero mostly.
Mostly.
At the end there, she gets to have another kind of hero moment to help save them. Vasquez has a great, not, I guess it's a hero moment, the way that she fights to the end. Like, that's what we'd expect from her character. She's such a badass. We were still being introduced to Cameron and his way of bringing females to the screen. Like, nobody up until Terminator and Aliens had we really seen female characters kind of be this badass on screen. Maybe there's,
and he never made a big deal about it.
Cool, but like, that's the Cameron thing. That's kind of the Spielberg thing, is like, they don't need to make a big deal out of things that are a big deal, which I love. Like, her being such a badass character. But yeah, I always love the way she uses her foot to plant it against the face. Yeah, she knows she's going to take some acid hits here, but she's still trying to fight for her survival, till the last second. And then you get the great moment with Gorman going back to try and help her.
Redemption.
Realizing that, it all is lost, and they bust out the grenade, and that's a setup for why Newt falls down the shaft. Like, everything informs the next thing, and like, nothing is lost. There's nothing that's just there for spectacle. It's all part of storytelling, character development, in what could just be seen as, look, it's got special effects, it's got creatures, it's got machine guns, it's a dumb action movie. No, not at all. Every second of this movie is intelligent.
And we also lose the sniveling Burke, whose plan, I don't understand what he thought he was going to do. If he locked out everybody, that was basically his salvation.
Yeah. I mean,
I think he was just freaking out.
Anyway, but
the Gorman Vasquez scene is a really great scene. It's a really great scene. Like, him going back for her and trying to take out a couple and actually showing that he can use a gun. Yeah, I guess then you get Newt down the shaft, gets, I guess, kidnapped. I guess they just don't hurt her for some reason. They're just like, oh, let's just put her up in this little spot and set her down.
Yeah, like, what makes the alien choose who's a host and who should be killed?
Yeah,
it doesn't always make sense. I often attribute it to, like, if they think they're a threat, which they just look at her as a much smaller human, without any armor, without anything that she, like, are they smart enough to know the difference between a gun? I guess so. They've been shot at. So
it's this terrifying scene where it's one of the bigger aliens. It comes up out of the water.
Yeah,
that is scary as fuck. But when she doesn't die from it, you're like, oh.
Certainly one of my favorite images, from the movie, is that one coming out of the water behind her. And then that run down the hallway, and they try to get the elevator to close, and the one dives through the doorway at Hicks. Like, there's a bunch of shots where the alien, as we said earlier in the film, you don't get to see them all that much. The environment,
that is a really good one. I don't think about enough. Yeah,
that's a really good one, where its head comes through the door, and the hands wrap around the door.
Angle of the camera is really cool too.
Yeah. And the sound design, their specific sound of, like, coming through.
You want to get into the rescue, which is one of the most badass, perfectly paced, timed out scenes in a movie ever, I think.
Well, you just called it. It's actually an amazing feat of filmmaking, because it is actually timed to the 15-minute time clock that they have, the countdown they have before the place blows up. It is actually 15 minutes of exact film from the time that she goes in to the time that the explosion goes off. That so rarely in a film, when they set up a time clock, do they give you that amount of time on screen and make it feel real.
Yeah, a lot of the times it shoots itself in the foot by giving that time thing, and you're like, no, this doesn't work at all. Well, I mean, let's not forget her elevator trip down, where she's strapping up the fucking pulse rifle with the flamethrower. I know it has a name, but
it's nothing but a person psyching herself up for this moment, and making herself more comfortable, taking off her sweaty top and strapping on, tying the gun together. But all of that, it's just, it's the music. The music is building up, the cuts, cutting away from her to show some of the destruction that's going on around the facility. And like it's atmosphere too. Like the movie, like you pointed out earlier, like the way that the sweat appears on characters and stuff like that, the way the wind blows through her hair in that elevator, you feel that like how hot it is, but that she feels a bit of cool air blow past her, and she like moves her head in a way to like soak that in, to try and be like, this is one little moment I can try to breathe without an alien in my face, but I'm not free of this. I'm going into the depths of hell to try and save my new daughter or whatever. Like
she's full-blown action star by this point in the story. You know, I mean, I guess the kind of sideline Hicks and sort of like it makes sense, you know, like
it makes sense. We wouldn't have wanted Hick. We want to see that, you know, mama bear going in for her cub, and how fierce, you know, how fierce a mama bear really is. Like,
that's true.
Female protecting their young are way different than a grunt, you know, a trained soldier. Like it's a whole different dynamic seeing her go in.
It'd be a whole different movie if you had him helping her in that scene. Yeah. So then we meet the queen, which we've talked about a little bit already, but fuck that scene. Yeah. And like I've seen some behind the scenes stuff of that, and the space that they use is one of the more to scale rooms where it does everything. I mean, everything you see in that scene was there, you know, pretty much, you know, puppets and the eggs.
We've talked about how this movie feels big in scale with all these aliens coming out of the walls everywhere, but that's actually one of the few times where you can see the true scale of the flame going all the way across the room and lighting up multiple rows of eggs at the same time, and her standing there with Newt. Like, it's all, like you said, it's all really there in that shot, and that's one of my favorite shots too, to really sell the realism.
Oh yeah, I think the whole movie is we've said it a million times, it's flawless, but as we start moving through scenes, I just keep thinking more and more like, oh my god, this is when Sigourney Weaver's just raw amazing acting ability comes out, is when it just keeps cutting to that pulse rifle sound and showing the amount of bullets left in the gun. And she just goes, ah, and she's making that noise, and it keeps getting closer and closer on her face. And she's just blasting the fucking eggs, and the music gets loud. That's the best scene of anything ever right there.
What a great showdown of mothers protecting their children. And you get all of it without any dialogue. It's all wordless. And it's, you know, the motivations are so clear for both of these creatures, you know, human and alien. It's just, again, back to just perfection. Like we built to this moment, and it's paying off perfectly.
A facial expression of Ripley too, where she's like,
oh,
let's see what the fuck you're doing.
It's almost up there with Get Away From Her, You Bitch, with like one of Ripley's best moments of just that head tilt. Nope, fuck you. Like, I love it so much. It's a nice little plant and payoff of the android human relationship that's set up through the first film.
Yeah.
You know, so that's, again, like more character driven storytelling in that moment. But yeah, I mean, I think, again, it's like the music plays into that to intensify it. You get this feeling of hopelessness when the queen arrives on that platform, and that wonderful shot of just for a second, all you see is smoke, but then it pokes its head comes out of the smoke. Like, I think Cameron is very Spielbergian.
You just hear the elevator door, by the way. That's all you hear. Yeah.
I think Cameron can be very Spielbergian in those moments of like reveal and awe. Different though, like the Spielberg moment, like looking up at a dinosaur or seeing the shark for the first time, the look on people's faces and stuff like that. It's different, but Cameron has his own way of selling those moments and making them like movie history. Like they work. All it is someone seeing something off screen, but it's still how he directs the actors in those moments, how he frames it, or how he reveals a monster in a certain scene or whatever. It works on a level just as good as anything Spielberg does.
Let's say that Ripley gets Newt and has the scene where she shoots the queens, and has her scene where Bishop is not there, but then he picks her up, and the alien's but the alien doesn't attach itself to the ship, and then they nuke the site from orbit. It blows up, and then the movie's over. Would you be satisfied with that movie?
Well,
because it's still a very intense scene.
Yeah, I think I still
kind of had a showdown with the alien queen already. You know.
I think I would have still. It's hard to say whether I would hold it higher than Terminator 2, because a big part of what Terminator 2, being my second favorite film, again James Cameron obviously, the finale has what this one has as well, where it's like you go through a couple stages of the finale and it keeps ramping up, and the you think the enemy's defeated but they come back and stuff like that, and it works really well. That happens in lots of movies, but it's like predictable and pointless. It's like, oh well, now they got to fight him again a little bit more, big deal. Like, so I don't know, Terminator, if you didn't have the finale where Ripley faced off with the Queen in the power loader, I might be calling Terminator 2 my favorite movie, but Aliens would probably still be pretty close, you know, if not second, maybe somewhere in the top 10. It's really hard to say, you know, how different I could view Aliens without that, because it is a very strong scene.
I like posing that question because, like I said, the Ripley scene of her just blowing away everything in there and the way it just keeps ramping up could have been considered your, like you said, Mama Bear versus Mama Bear, but then they fucking won up to that. And they had a hand-to-hand fucking duke it out punching match after that, which is just so probably I want to say maybe the hardest thing to shoot out of the whole movie.
It seems like it certainly could be. I mean, the power loader is completely realized and believable on screen. It's not using CGI. Completely believably, the way it moves, it fights another creature that to me is a real animal. Somewhere on this planet, in a cage somewhere, is a queen alien, because how else did they shoot that and make it look so realistic? My brain never wants to tell me that is a special effect. It is a trained animal giving an amazing performance, because of course it is. Look at it. Look how real it is.
Yeah. Just the way it sounds. I mean, it's so fully realized in every detail, from its different sounds that it makes to the way it moves.
So I still hold the Queen Alien as the greatest creation of a creature on screen, because you never have even a second of it looking like a CGI creation, because it, you know, there isn't one.
So much of it is close-ups, and that's why it works so well. Quick cutting, close-ups. Yeah, you do see it fully realized, the Queen, and it is there in all its glory, and you can see the scale of it, but it doesn't linger on those full wide shots of what it looks like, and they don't show it really moving. I think the coolest shot of the Queen is when it reveals itself from the dropship.
Back to sound design and score, and you know, the sound of the power loader, the sounds it makes, the sounds that the Queen's jaw makes when it extends and stuff like that. It's just the tail whipping. It all has distinct sounds.
I think it was Roger Ebert who said he thought this movie was brilliant, but it made him so depressed. Did you ever hear that quote of his?
Yeah.
He said it made him so depressed
because of how much through the ringer he felt when coming out of it. But he's right. But that's what's so great about it. It's my favorite movie. And yeah, maybe an 11-year-old shouldn't have, you know, enjoy the thrill ride of going through an alien world and the survival, but I don't know, that's what I've always gravitated to, is this being a pure survival story. You know, you've got these characters that you're introduced and given enough to really care for them for the first hour of the movie, and then it just becomes all out survival for the rest of the movie. And like a Die Hard, it's a enclosed environment that you can't escape from. You know, every character has to fight their way to the end of this movie. No one's going to get an easy out, and it lives up to that. Like, you know, no one does get an easy out, and it's a pure fight for survival all the way through, in a way that no one had ever seen before. Even 35 years later, I don't think anyone's been able to to pull it off in the same way. They've tried many times to make movies similar.
And Ripley is one of my favorite movie characters of all time, because you watch, well, 1 and 2, I think she actually devolves after 2, but like by the end of 2, they never forgot to make sure she remembers everything she's ever learned about her experiences with these things, and she uses that knowledge in every way, especially at the end. She's like, oh well, I can't kill this thing on a moving spaceship because it's going to burn right through the thing. Oh, what did I do last time? Oh, I'll just open an airlock. And people are like, oh, that's the same beat as the first one. It's like, well, that's the only way you can do it, like, safely.
The DP wanted to light the Hive scene brighter than Cameron wanted. And that scene, as we talked about, works with what you don't see. It's all about keeping things hidden in that scene, and the editing that doesn't display this big set. It makes it feel claustrophobic and scary and fear of the unknown. All you have to hear is a character say, it's coming out of the goddamn walls. We don't need to see every alien that came out of the goddamn walls.
Yeah.
So all these little things, like the crew not really, like them wanting to take coffee breaks or tea breaks, almost like sabotaging certain shots. If from commentary tracks and making of videos, there's a lot of talk about how the crew was not helping Cameron make this movie. They were fighting against him.
Yeah, because they were British. They didn't like his work ethic.
Yeah, exactly. And still, I don't think anybody does, because he's a taskmaster. But still, look at the films he's produced. They didn't know it at the time that they were working with a genius, but he overcame all of that and made the greatest movie ever. Still holds the title with 2 of the highest grossing films ever. I know box office doesn't equate to quality. As we point out, Aliens only made 85 million, but is still the best movie ever. But Cameron can do it over and over again. I don't care what the box office is. Every movie he makes is working on some level of perfection. Even if Avatar, is his weakest, in my opinion, he's still pretty much working on a level of perfection all the way through his career.
Because you couldn't make that movie for $18 million now. You just couldn't. So if you try to extend it in that inflated, perspective, then it could have been $1 billion film.
It is things that feel tactile on screen because they're not using CGI. Like, the techniques still exist. Why can't we use them still?
Well, you have less and less people doing those big puppet work things and creating big live action creatures. You just have less people doing it. So, and that's a shame. I was never scared of an alien again after Aliens, because I knew it wasn't there.
I'm a lane switcher, big tank blank filler, real killer, die for my gang number.
But when it happens midpoint of a franchise where it's all been just people in suits and puppet work, and then all of a sudden Alien 3, you're like, what is that fucking thing running around? It's like, it clearly isn't there. It doesn't look like, it doesn't have the same grading. It like looks odd and it's moving weird. This was the first movie going experience in my life where like I felt the weight of like everything happening around it. I had seen a movie before that in the theater. I mean, I saw Return of the Jedi, probably E.T., but I don't remember. I know the same year I saw Top Gun, which blew me away for different reasons. But this was the one that like I shouldn't have been in. My cousin shouldn't have taken me there when I was 9 years old, but boy, am I fucking glad he did, because it never left my mind. And like, that's probably, that movie is probably the thing that shaped what I like in movies more than anything else. Obviously my taste changed as I got older and I liked dramatic dialogue driven stuff as well. But I don't know. Aliens, I hold everything kind of to that movie when it comes of overall, like how you make a movie work,
Yes. That's my take on it. Exactly. I hold everything against the movie making qualities of Aliens, and they all fall short. And that's why it is perfection of movie making. And loving it as much as I do, holding every other movie up to that candle, they all fail so miserably to me that I have to knock them down a little bit. Like, sure. They're accomplished in their own way. They've got good filmmakers behind them. They made tons of money, whatever they are. They've got their franchise starters. I don't care. with $18 million and a crew that didn't want to help out, Cameron made perfection, and everyone else should be able to achieve that too, and they can't. So this movie is an 11 for me.
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly.
It's 150 million, really. It's above everything else, but in our own little grading scale, we came up with movies that go up to 11. Yes, because we like to have fun with Spinal Tap, but really because movies like this exist, and they deserve to be heralded as better than just an A+ top 10. This is a perfect 10. No, this goes beyond. This goes beyond. There's lots of movies that are great that you can say deserve 10, but only a few, really only a handful that deserve an 11, that go above and beyond. And this is one of those. This is the best ever.
And this movie is 35 years old this week, which is amazing when you look at movies now and you look at this movie. 35 years old. I wasn't even in double digits of life yet. And that's how amazing hard work and talent and skill and determination, what that can do on screen if you know what you're doing. You also have to be good at what you do.
One other little fun fact is this shirt right here. I don't know if you can see this. This is the readout of all of the crew.
There it is. Gorman, Epone.
And another thing I figured out by watching stuff too much, there's a bunch of characters like Ripley, Hicks, Hudson. Hudson doesn't show up on here for some reason.
Yeah, why is Hudson not on there?
I don't know. but like all the minor characters, including like Jeanette Goldstein. Let me find her on here. Vasquez. Well, where the fuck is she? Vasquez. J. Vasquez. So he just uses the real actor's first initial. D. Spunkmeyer. The guy's name is Dwayne. C. Dietrich. Her name is like Connie or something like that.
Oh, because they never had first names in the movie.
They don't have first names, but I figured that out by watching the cast list many times on VHS, going, ooh, who's that? Who's this? Who's this actor? And then seeing this readout and pausing it and going, wait, look, their first initial, like, what is their name? Apone, Al Apone, wherever he is. Al Matthews is his name. So not all of them, but almost all of them.
Yeah, because Ripley still has an E there. Name. Yeah.
I think.
Damn, dude. Folks, if that's not a fucking Aliens fan, then I don't know what is.
Hudson, for whatever reason, not showing up on the shirt.
That's bullshit right there. That's some bullshit.
On the real readout, I know. I saw it right away. I told Tony, I'm like, hey, did you notice it doesn't have Hudson? But I think it has a W, which can be William and Bill. So his does kind of line up. But and like even Bishop has an L, which means he's got a first name of Lance.
I like to think that Hudson's real first name is Wally Hudson. he just looks like a Wally, or Chet. Could be Chet.
Yes. Didn't you say it's Hudson on break or whatever?
Yeah, Hudson on R&R. Yeah.
I named my son after James Cameron to some degree. Will I start him off with a really scary movie like Alien and make him sit through that just so we can watch Aliens at some point? Or just start off with the greatest of all time, Aliens? He's not going to watch it till he's 10 or 12, but at the same time, when he's old enough, he will get the full Alien experience.
Okay, everyone, that was the 35th anniversary of arguably the greatest movie of all time, Aliens.
No argument here.
yeah. Hope everyone if you're watching this and you haven't seen it, well, we gave a lot away, but hopefully we compelled you to watch it. And if you've seen it and you love it like us, we hope you enjoyed celebrating 35 years of greatness, which is James Cameron's Aliens, with us. So we want to thank you guys so much. Till next time, I'm Ben.
And I'm John.
Game over, man! Game over!
Fresh out the box with a bass knock to start the game, or some forces lacing tied up the way they came. So before you state your claims, you might find it in your best interest to take his name and then store it in your brain and take into consideration. It may be pouring rain the day you discovered, oh, I had to let your lover go, or lose your last game when he pays exact change.